Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Toffee Blues YouTube channel, your source for all things Everton. My name's, of course, Cal. I'd like to say that I'm joined by James from the Babbling Blues, and we are going to be discussing the news that we're all waiting for, really, isn't it? A lot of talk over the last couple of days. It just seems to be one thing after another. 1 minute it's Lampard, then it's not Lampard, then Pereira, then not Pereira, and then all of a sudden today, Dunk's come back into the conversation, strangely enough. It seemed the other night that it was very much looking like it was going to be Frank Lampard to be taking the Everton job. And that seemed to be a pretty much done deal. And I think for a lot of Evertonians, it was an excuse for us maybe to sigh a little bit of a relief that that's sorted and we can then move on to the next thing, which is obviously staying in the Premier League. And I think it was, a welcome thing that there was a manager we could get behind. And then before you knew it, it all gets flipped on its head again. And we don't know where we're standing, apart from the fact that there is meant to have been another round of interviews today in London between Frank Lampard, Vitor Pereira and Dunk. So, James, thanks for coming on the stream with us. What are your thoughts on the last couple of days and how the sort of managerial hunt's been going? Because, to be honest, I think it's getting a bit frustrating now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a shambles, really, hasn't it? I think everyone's quite happy to say how it is now. We've been through this countless times under Managerial, sacks managers, and then there's never a continuity plan. You never know who he's going to go for. You see Watford sack their manager, and then a day later they brought in Roy Hodgson. I'm not saying I want to get Roy Hodgson by interest and imagination, but you got to at least admire, whilst I think Watford are ran bizarrely, they get rid of managers and then they know who they're going to bring in. It's none of this interviewing 4 or 5 people. It's not being linked with every out-of-work manager under the sun. It's just get rid of one, get someone new in. And their cut-through businesses has brought them the best time in the club's history since sort of the 80s. So, whereas ours has brought us the worst period of time since our sort of disastrous sort of spell in the 90s. So, it's been really, really poor this week, as you say. You're going up and down, left and right. I was in work the other day, went in thinking it was going to be Pereira. You go midway through my shift, and then it's like Pereira's out the equation, and then the next day, as you say, he's back in again. It's just it's madness. The way it's moved is just it's been a shambles, and I think I'm glad to see all these protests. I'm glad to see a lot of people aren't happy with it because we can't keep going on like this. We'll get relegated if this is the way that you're going to move the club forward. Lessons have to have been learned from this. If it is to be Lampard and it doesn't work, then we can't do this again because this has just been the most prolonged, protracted, disgraceful managerial search I can think of for a very, very long time. I can't think of another team who've got it this wrong on so many occasions. So, I just hope it is to be Lampard now, more so because it means it's not Vitor Pereira, but as you say, it's just someone to get behind, someone who I think, whilst certainly not 100% of the fan base are behind, I think you have a lot more behind him than you would behind Pereira. So, I just hope that's what happens now because I think it's the best case scenario.
Yeah, definitely. And you made a really good point there. You mentioned Watford. And I think I've seen a lot of people tweeting about this, of how they put this whole idea of Vitor Pereira coming into the club in the current position that we're in at the minute. It just has like a sort of Watford-esque appointment written all over it, doesn't it? He's a bit of a no-mark manager who's coming in, who's just purely on the basis of a very misinformed decision by the owner. And it just adds to the worries that we could get relegated. So Vitor Pereira is a big no-no. But again, it just adds to the circus which has been happening over the last couple of days. And it's been nothing short of an embarrassment. We saw, news started to break the other night that Vitor Pereira was the preferred candidate for the job, which was followed by a mass protest outside Goodison, which was a fantastic turnout, by the way. Big respect to everyone who turned up to Goodison and made their feelings known in the way that they did. And it seemed to have allegedly made Managerial make a bit of a U-turn on Pereira's decision, much to the satisfaction of the fans. But now we're in the dark with it again, really. Vitor Pereira, he's not the man, James, is he at all? He's another guy coming from China, sorry. Had a bit of success in Portugal, but, Marco Silva had success in no-mark leagues as well, and we know how that turned out. What are your thoughts on Vitor Pereira as a manager? His CV doesn't really make for good reading, and of course, looking at when he went on Sky the other night, that was just a debacle. That wasn't that alone should be enough for him to be completely out of the conversation now, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So, what are your thoughts on Vitor Pereira, firstly?
Well, I think, to be fair, he'll probably come out in the Athletic eventually, whether he was told to go on Sky from the club, whether he did that off his own back. I really don't know who to believe or what to think of that, but it was nothing short of embarrassing, as you say. It was a real sort of dark few hours for us there, because I think we were just on blast as being the worst ranked club, if not in England, certainly one of the worst run in the country, which is saying a lot because there's a lot of really poorly run football clubs further down the pyramid. But I know very little about Vitor Pereira in terms of the in-depths, but I was speaking to someone the other day who knows a lot more about him, and he thinks, and someone who speaks a lot of Portuguese and watches a lot of Portuguese football knows that he would be a really poor appointment for us. The 1860 Munich stuff is just, it's so worrying. It reminds me less of Watford, to be fair, and more of Leeds when they were under Chilino a few years ago, and I remember they brought in a manager, his name is David Hockaday. They brought him in, and he was, I think, Forest Green's manager or something ridiculous like that. They brought him up, promoted him way beyond what he should have done. He lasted about 5 games and he was gone. And it felt like that kind of appointment where if things started badly, it was never ever going to get better. And, I think 10 years ago, he wasn't good enough to beat out Roberto Martinez, who we know is a really poor football manager, certainly in my opinion anyway. So why on earth, after spells in China, obviously continued on in Portugal and Germany, Greece, he's been all over the gaff. Turkey now, he's just washed up. He seems just to be like another version of Benitez, except he hasn't got the success that even Benitez has. Defensive coach again. It's like they don't seem to know what kind of football Everton fans want. And then I think there's been denials from his camp that he's affiliated with Keir Trabzon, but the whole Keir Trabzon debacle is just a whole separate entity as to why this has just been a shocking, really poor, soul-sucking sort of passage towards getting a new manager. He's never the man for the job. It felt like he only got linked last time when we got Ancelotti just so he could get a new contract in China, which he duly did. He had a bit of success there, but I think like Cannavaro, I don't really care if you do well in China. Some manager can thrive, some can do really poorly out there, so it doesn't really make a difference to me. And then obviously he's gone to Turkey and he's now left there as well. So he's had a really poor sort of at least 5, maybe 10 years now, and the fact that he thought he could just rock up at Everton, do that interview and get the job is really poor. But it's worrying that he's gotten as far as today. So yeah, definitely not the man for me, and I think you'll find very few Everton fans who would not get behind him, because everyone would get behind him, but you'd find very few who'd pick him in the first place, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it, isn't it? And I think one of the big frustrations as well with this whole managerial debacle, which we just seem to be in on the regular these days, is just the complete lack of sort of idea of a straight sort of plan that the club have. They lack any sort of plan in terms of this, because here we are now. It's only been 2 weeks since Rafa Benitez was sacked, and there seems to still be that age-old argument that there's too many voices in the boardroom pulling in different directions. You've got Dunk, Lampard, and Pereira, and there's talk that there could be an announcement tonight. Personally, I can't see that happening. I don't think we'll get an announcement tonight. Possibly over the weekend, I think, is more likely. But just the way it's been handled with Pereira going on live television, and just how it's been made out like there's going to be a boardroom meeting tonight where a final decision will be made. It's being portrayed like it's some kind of TV show. It's like The Apprentice or something. It's ridiculous the way they're going about it, because this is our club, this is the fans' club, and it just seems to be like it's like a toy. The club's being treated like a toy almost, and like there doesn't seem to be any great bearing on this decision making, and who's making the decision making more importantly as well. Erwin Koeman in the comments, he said thoughts on Wayne Rooney. Wayne Rooney has come out today and he said that there was an approach made by Everton to Derby County, and reading in between the lines, it's sort of it looks like he's just looked at the situation at Everton and he's just distanced himself from it and says that he's got his own problems at Derby and he doesn't need the stress of Everton by any means. So what are your thoughts? First of all, before Rooney's come out and set the record straight on this potential approach by Everton, what was your sort of thoughts on Rooney as a manager? Because some people were very much of the idea that he could get behind Rooney, myself being one of them. I feel like he could have maybe galvanised the club a little bit, but it seems that he's got his own plans for Derby and that, and he just seems from the outside looking in, he's probably distanced himself from it by a great mile, and he's well within his rights to do so. So what were your thoughts on Wayne Rooney as a potential candidate? Would you have liked to see him come in, or do you think that would have been maybe not the best move? And of course, what do you make of his comments today?
I was unsure, to be fair. I think I loved Rooney as a kid, and then when he came back, I very quickly got behind the idea. I think I didn't sort of look at the fact that we were signing a pretty washed up older player, and we signed him in obviously a position where we were well strengthened in that summer and stuff. So that didn't end well either. He's doing unbelievable at Derby. There's absolutely no question about it. The team they've been putting out this season is really, really poor. It's just youth players, lads who ain't good enough to play for Man United, and a couple of lads who are getting towards their 40s, like Cahill, Kieran Forsyth, and Curtis Davis, whoever it might be. There's absolutely, it's just a mishmash of really, really poor footballers or younger players, and he's doing unbelievably. I think I said when I spoke to James on here the other week, I said that he's gone into a dressing room there where it's mostly younger players or players he knew from United, like Tom Lawrence and Ravel Morrison. I guess he got the younger players there as well. They're going to look up to him because he's a United legend, he's an England legend. I think it's a lot easier for him to get a tune out of these lads when he's getting them to run through brick walls for him every game. And if you do that, I don't care what division you played in, how good you played, so you got a chance. So the fact that he's got them playing to sort of mid-table level, if it wasn't for the point deductions, all credit to him. Really appreciate that from the work he's done. And I did say I think that character would work really well at Everton, but I just think the way the squad is right now, I can't see so many of those players buying into a manager who is managerial infancy. I think he just had his year anniversary at Derby. I know he's done well, as I say, but he probably wouldn't have been overall my first choice, but I think he will be a good manager. And I think you can read what he said today in one or two ways. I think I kind of took it as, he's staying loyal to Derby. I think someone said he's now shown more loyalty to Derby than he ever did to us, which is quite true, to be fair. I think he was linked to the United job, which was obviously never going to happen, but it was a good chance for him to sort of get the fans on side earlier on in the campaign with Derby. Or you can look at it and say that he didn't think he was going to get the job, so why kind of go through it? Continue with this free hit. He's getting a lot of praise, a lot of good PR, and if he manages this, he's going to get. He could well get a top level Championship or Premier League job at the end of the season if he keeps Derby up, because it would be perhaps the greatest escape in football history. So if he's got that to his name, then I think a lot of teams would take a punt on him, and especially those with good younger players, as I say. So I'm not sure which way to take it, whether it is a case of he genuinely loves Derby, which I think he probably does, and whether he is genuinely loyal to them, or whether he just thought, I'm not going to get the job at Everton. He was happy enough to say, come and approach me if you want to. But I think by the time that happened, I think Lampard was already in the frame. It looked like Pereira was going to get it. I'm just not too sure on how to fully take it, because I would be a bit surprised if he kind of thought the situation is really bad, because I think managers are typically got big egos. They're quite erroneous. They back themselves, and rightly so, because they want to succeed at the top level. So I'm not 100% sure, but I think Rooney will be a good manager one day. I would have got behind him if he came to Everton, but I think it would be just a bit too soon, and that's probably why I'm more so interested in Frank Lampard at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I think Wayne Rooney, it's probably in his best interest to stay at Derby at the end of the day, really, isn't it? Because as you've just mentioned, they're getting good PR. He's doing a fantastic job, and he's only doing good things for his reputation at Derby at the moment. So it does, if I was Wayne Rooney at the minute, I don't think I'd want to come to Everton when I'm getting so much loads of plaudits from the job that I'm doing at my current club. You mentioned Lampard there. A lot of talk about Lampard last couple of days. He seems to be the preferred candidate, I think it's fair to say. It looked like he's had a couple of interviews. It's looking like he's impressed. It's a name that's never sort of gone away since Rafa Benitez's sacking. And, it seems that a lot of fans are under the impression that he could really get behind Lampard. And I'd definitely agree with that. He's a proven winner. He was one of the best English footballers of his generation. All-time leading goal scorer for Chelsea. Well respected within the game, and I think he'd command respect off the players as well. And he knows the Premier League inside out. For too long, I think Everton have maybe hired managers that are a bit out of touch with with how things are in a modern day Premier League era. Like Rafa Benitez, it's quite dinosaur tactics, if you like. I look at Marco Silva, didn't really know the Premier League an awful lot. Took Hull down. And I had very limited experience with Watford. But, Frank Lampard, he's had a lot of experience in the Premier League, in the modern era, if you like. He's passionate, which is always a big plus for Everton fans. And we did a fantastic job at Derby County as well. And it was all ended a bit sour at Chelsea, but it doesn't take much to get sacked there, does it? So Frank Lampard, I think, given the three names that are being bandied about, he's the most popular of the three, and he seems to be a name that a lot of fans can get behind. Lawrence Elliott in the comments, he's a Chelsea fan, and he said Lampard will get you young, energetic football, but defence is a massive issue, conceding goals. Well, we look at young players. I think that's been a big theme this season, hasn't it? We've been crying out for quite a lot of youngsters to come in. We had the news earlier in the week of Lewis Dobbins signing that new contract. We've been crying out for players like Jared Brantwaite to play more. Ellis Sims, albeit he's just going out on loan. Anthony Gordon's had a great season as well, and he seems to be quite big on youth. Frank Lampard. What's your take on Lampard? I know you mentioned before that he's the name that probably stands out for you out of the three as well. So what can you see Frank Lampard bringing to this Everton club at the minute?
Well, I think as Lauren said there, I think his brand of football, I prefer that to sort of sitting back and soaking up pressure and trying to hit teams on the counter like I think Benitez tried to do, then realised we weren't good enough to do that. I think it probably suits us better. I think I posted on our podcast account yesterday about how he came fourth in his first season at Chelsea, but I think expected points had him closer to second. Expected goals, I think, was third. Expected goals against, I think he was fifth, and obviously they had Kepa in goal, which meant they conceded more goals than they probably should have done. So I think his numbers look really good there. Even in the second season, I think for expected points, they were still second, even though I think they were 8th or 9th when he got sacked, and they still scored plenty of goals. They let in some goals, absolutely, and that's kind of where you get a bit worried. But I kind of look at that as well and say, well, this is like I don't know how old he is, 41, 42, maybe. He's a young manager, very young by the sort of English standards at least, perhaps less so abroad, maybe in Germany or somewhere he'd be a little bit considered a bit older than what they're kind of coming out with at the minute. But young manager, he's gone away from the game for about a year now, and you just like to hope, rather than with someone who's stuck in their ways like a Benitez or an Allardyce or an Ancelotti, whoever it might be, you like to think in that year he can progress his ideas, become a better manager, a better coach. Whether we've got defenders that suit him better, I don't quite know. Whether you look at the fact that there's less pressure on him, he can maybe afford to play someone who suits the club a bit better, because maybe he didn't play for Cahill Tomori loads, and obviously Tomori eventually left Chelsea. Maybe he thought he's going to have to play the likes of Rudiger or Thiago Silva he brought in because they're on bigger money. I don't quite know. So whilst it is a bit of a worry, I think we've got a better goalkeeper than what Chelsea did for a large part of his time there. Better than the goal he had at Derby as well. I think it's Calarus who played in goal for a large part of his spell there, and they conceded a fair few goals too. That is the only worry I have in terms of Lampard, other than the question of whether he's overall going to be good enough for Everton. But I do think you can take that and kind of say, well, he's a younger manager, he wants to improve, and I'm sure he's trying to come up with a way to play with the football he wants to play, but also make us more solid at the back. And if we can keep our players fit, if we can get to likes of Patterson and Mikalenko in the team, I think we've actually got a relatively solid defence, and I'd say a good goalkeeper. So if you can strengthen maybe the central midfield if he is to come in, then I think that aspect of his managerial sort of career will improve. That's what we're hoping for anyway, Sam.
Yeah, he ticks a lot of boxes, doesn't he, James? He's young, passionate. He has a track record of putting a lot of faith in youth. You only have to look at players like Mason Mount, Hudson-Odoi, Tomori, as you just mentioned there, and these are players who've gone on to really break out in the last couple of years and really make a name for themselves. So if you could do something like that with some of our youngsters, the likes of your Dobbins, Brantwaite, make Gordon kick on to maybe even that next level. That's going to be just something that we can really get behind as well. Of course, there's the issue with the defence, which is a lot of people's sort of con, if you like, in terms of Frank Lampard. Our centre-halves haven't exactly covered themselves in much glory this season. But yeah, as I say, looking at the names that we are currently dealing with at the minute, Lampard does look the most promising. And I think from the off, he seemed to be quite a popular candidate. And and if it is Lampard, I think it'll galvanise the club a little bit, something fresh, something different. Something you see a lot in the Premier League now. We see all these players who have played quite fairly recently coming in and managing. You look at Steven Gerrard. Fantastic appointment for Aston Villa. He had a lot of success at Rangers. He's come to the Premier League, and he's really set up his stall at Aston Villa, and it looks like he's going to have a successful time there. Patrick Vieira is another one. He's doing fantastically well at Crystal Palace this season. Seems to have brought a bit of stability there. And let's not forget Lampard. Obviously I'm no Chelsea fan by any means, but he did a good job at Chelsea. His first season especially, but he was quite unlucky in his second season. Again, I don't know the ins and outs of Chelsea, but from the outside looking in, he didn't do an awful job. So this Everton challenge just seems like something that Lampard's looking to embrace, if you like. Of course, it's going to be difficult if he does get the job. It's going to be a really big challenge on his hands, given the current state of the club. But as I said before, it's something different, it's something fresh, and it seems to be a bit of a trend in the Premier League now. These younger managers coming in, and as the point I mentioned before, they've played in the Premier League quite recently and understand this sort of modern era, if we like. Of course, we are live on YouTube, so if you could get the likes up, that'd be fantastic. Just moving on now, we are going to talk about the other name who's been talked about. Who, as I mentioned at the start of the stream, it didn't really seem like he was very much in the picture anymore. He was a name a lot of people would have been quite happy to see get the job, albeit till the end of the season, when Rafa first got sacked. And that's Duncan Ferguson. News today that he was on his way down to London for this hopefully final round of interviews. So Dunk took charge of the Villa game. Let's be honest, it wasn't really anything like that Chelsea game, was it? The atmosphere wasn't the same. It just, you try to recreate that game. It was never going to happen. A couple of questionable team selection decisions from Dunk that day, which maybe cooled a lot of people's excitement for him to get the job. What do you think about Dunk? Would you have given it to him? Do you think it's not really the right time, given the situation the club's in, too big of a risk? What do you think about Ferguson and how you felt about him getting the job, but how he's come back into the conversation in these sort of final stages, we hope, of the appointment?
Yeah, I think when we were again talking about it when Benitez left, I think a lot of people have said that was what was going to happen. He was going to come in at least for the Villa game. There's a lot of rumours that we wanted to make an appointment prior to that match, which you look at the fact that we're a week later and we're further down the line, but we're still not there. It kind of shows that was never going to happen. As I said, the Chelsea game just felt different. Even walking to the ground, it felt different. The Villa game, it felt different to the Chelsea match because walking to the ground when he got there was no big sort of fanfare about him. He wasn't announced to be the new manager for the time being like it was last time. And I'm sure he probably said he didn't want to make a big deal out of it. It wasn't a day about him. The Chelsea game was about him, I think. This one wasn't. This was just him taking charge of the team. And we were certainly better, I think, on the whole, whilst we weren't terrific. I didn't think Villa were great either, and I think, to be fair, I think a draw probably would have been quite a fair result on the day from what I saw. But I did say last week I was just worried how sustainable we were under Dunk, and I think that game kind of showed that where we are at the minute. He's brought John Joe Kenny in, for example. There's no Patson, there's no Coleman. We had Godfrey at left back again. It just isn't quite the same sort of team he had when he came in last time, when we had a sort of solid sort of back line to pick from, and we were an overall quite solid team, and he made us much better than what we were under Marco Silva. But it just doesn't make any sense to me, because the owner and Ken Wright, Baxendale, Sharp, maybe even Tim Cahill, whoever it's going to be now, they know Duncan Ferguson inside out. Why on earth does he have to be interviewed for this position? Because I think you interview a manager not to see their tactics and not to see their ideas, because you should know that already. I think you interview them just to see their personality, see whether they fit the club. Frank Lampard, I think, would fit Everton in terms of all the things we mentioned so far today, but they must know everything about Duncan Ferguson. I've got no idea why he's being interviewed for a position that, okay, I'm sure he does want, but I'm not fully convinced he fully wants it. I just think there's so many things in the game of being a manager that he probably just won't enjoy, that I just can't understand why he would get the job at this point. I think the fact that obviously we got beat the other day kind of, let's say, dampens any excitement for him. And it's just too much of a risk. I think if we had another 10 points on the board, then I think, yeah, absolutely, I'd just say pull him for the rest of the season. We'll probably finish 12th, 13th, maybe. It's fine. I don't really mind. But that's not what happened. That's not where we are at the minute. Because of how the club's been ran, we are now in a position where we have to be decisive. And we ended up with 3 relatively uninspiring managers. Overall, I think that's kind of how Everton fans would look at it. So I love Duncan. I think this is probably the right time for him to go. Maybe at the end of the season, if he doesn't get the job now, I think maybe he's probably had his day now. And as much as I love him, as much as I appreciate the fact that we called him and he's answered twice now, is great and everything. But I just think if he's not going to be the manager of Everton now, I can't really see what he's going to do. But we're waiting to see what happens. But I think the fact that he's in this round of interviews, as you say, it's like a television show. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it is strange, I have just received a text of someone saying it's Lampard. I don't know if that means has anything else happened on Twitter. If anyone's watching the comments and refreshes Twitter, I don't know if anything's been said or anything. But if something has cropped up on Twitter, be sure to leave it in the comments and we can of course react to that. But in the meantime, James, a bit of other news coming out today is this whole thing about Tim Cahill. It's looking like he's set for a role in what was it, like a footballing role? So something to do with the first
technical
team.
Director, I think.
Yeah, technical director. So
something like that.
Whether that's a director of football, whether that's Marcel Brands' replacement, or whether that's working as like some kind of player development advisor role, whatever. I don't know. Now a lot of people have said, jobs for the boys. We shouldn't be recruiting old faces. You look at the Graham Sharp thing a couple of weeks ago. But the thing with Tim Cahill, is that he seems to have the CV for it, if that makes sense. He seems to have done his badges a lot. He's had some similar roles in clubs abroad. I feel like he'll bring something fresh to Everton. There is the whole argument for jobs for the boys, and I do understand that, and I completely agree with that to an extent. But I think Tim Cahill maybe offers something slightly different, a bit of experience. Again, I go back to the point I made before. How he's played in the Premier League in this modern sort of era with Cahill. I know he left the club 10 years ago, but we still played fairly recently. What are your thoughts on Tim Cahill coming back to the club? Do you feel like that's a good move, or do you feel like this is just the whole sort of concept that we need to be dodging?
No, I quite like it, to be fair. I think it is that idea of jobs for the boys. Yeah, Jose Baxter, Franny Jeffers, much as I love them, Leighton Baines, Graham Sharp, Diamond. There's so many you think that does kind of be that kind of is what it feels like. It is just kind of a job for people who know Everton, and the fact that you put the blue shirt on makes you qualified. It's not the case. Whereas Tim Cahill has gone away. He's not being funny, but he's gone to India and Australia, all over England. He went to China for a bit, America. He's been all over the gaff with football. He clearly loves the sport. He loves Everton. That's great start. But then he's gone. I think he's been in Belgium, I want to say, maybe doing a role. I think it might be Charleroi or FC Ukon. I can't quite remember. But he's been out and about. He's gone and done his. Maybe he hasn't quite done as much as maybe I'd like him to. But I think at this moment in time, if he to bring Tim Cahill back, it just kind of says to me that they're getting the fans on side. They're having someone who they know represents the fans at boardroom level. He's been heavily involved with stuff to do with Samuel Eto'o and the whole sort of FIFA as a whole. He's a very well qualified individual, and I think again it's that kind of idea of he absolutely lives and breathes Everton, and he's got the CV to back it up. Whereas someone like Graham Sharp, who I never get to see, but I absolutely love Graham Sharp, absolutely love Leighton Baines, but I'm just not convinced these are the kind of guys who you want at Everton. I think you need some kind of blue blood, if you like, up and down the club at every sort of level, but they need to have the CV and the sort of pedigree to match. I think Tim Cahill fits that pretty much perfectly, as I think you kind of said there. I'd be all for it.
Yeah, Cam from the Mighty Blues has joined in the comments. Thanks for watching, Cam. And he says another thing about Cahill is that he's a master marketer, marketed himself unbelievable as a player. That's what we need. We want our club to start becoming a bit more what's the word I'm looking for? Attractive again. Because at the minute, from the outside looking in, it just looks like an absolute mess. So if Cahill can clean that mess up a little bit, that's only going to do us good. Tommy says a few accounts on Instagram are saying it's Lampard. So maybe a bit of noise is picking up that it could be Frank getting the job. So we'll keep an eye on that. And any official announcement, I'm sure there'll be a separate video going into any managerial announcements in more depth. Let's assume it is Lampard that gets the job, James. Now the transfer window shuts very soon. It shuts on Monday. we had some news that Abdoulaye Doucouré is going to be facing a spell on the sidelines as well, which just isn't what we need at all. I think it's quite obvious we need a midfielder, if not some more bodies, because at the minute this current crop of players just aren't doing it for us, are they? Now, as of right this second, we have no director of football, we have no manager. The transfer window shuts very, very soon. And if that leaves Mashiri to be making these decisions, that frightens the life out of me, especially with Cahill in his ear as well. So let's hypothetically say over the next 24 hours, Lampard's announced as the Everton manager. Can you see him bringing in any players? There's been a couple of rumours about the likes of Loftus-Cheek, which is probably something I'd welcome. I've seen a couple of Dele Allis mentioned as well. Lampard gets in. Do you think he maybe has some targets lined up? And if so, who would you like to see come in? Because, God, we do need it.
Yeah, I think it appears to be that today is the kind of day where they do talk about targets, and I'm sure it probably is just Vitor Pereira just listing off everyone in Keir Trabzon's Rolodex. I'm not too sure what Lampard's going to kind of see there, but I did hear rumours of Billy Gilmore maybe having his loan at Norwich cut and then to come to here. Loftus-Cheek, I think that was Paul Joyce actually, which is quite a good source, and he's kind of someone we've been tentatively linked with a few times. Again, I'd be all for him. Dele Alli as well, obviously, because we've signed El Ghazi on loan, bizarrely. I'm pretty sure we can only sign one other player on loan from England, from English club. So I don't think we'll be able to get Dele Alli and Loftus-Cheek unless maybe, I think there's someone said that if you get a loan with an option to buy or an obligation to buy, it's okay. I'm not too sure, but I'm sure Lampard will have his target. I'm sure he'll do a bit of an audit of the squad, like Benitez supposedly did when he took over and then failed to sign a right back, for example. But I think they'll have targets in mind. They need to get a centre mid in. They need some creativity in an attacking midfield position, and then anything else will be a big bonus for us. But I do think a central midfield player and then someone who can play in that sort of number 10 role. I know Lampard likes to play 4-2-3-1 or even 4-3-3. So
would that be Barkley, James? Joe's just put reports Lampard wants Barkley too. Is that a name that could, all history aside, given the lack of pace we have and creativity at the minute, would that be a name that you could maybe put the past aside and see him rejoin, or even if it's till the end of the season and work with Lampard and maybe try and offer us something a bit different?
Personally, I can't. That's me. I mean, I know if I wasn't looking past it, definitely not. If I was looking past it, I just kind of think he's done nothing since he left Everton, really. He had a good couple of months at Villa. He said when he left Everton he didn't want to play number 10, couldn't play that role. So I wouldn't understand the signing to play that role. He wasn't really used by Lampard. I think he had 800 or 900 minutes during the season there. I could be slightly out, but he wasn't used hugely. I know they had Mason Mount there, but I don't think he was a massive fan of Ross Barkley. In fairness, I think Tuchel's used a little bit more this season as well. So I wouldn't be hugely for Barkley, if I'm being totally honest with you. Mostly because he's technically hugely gifted. I just don't think he's a great footballer overall. I think he's got some really good aspects. He was fearless when he was young. He looked like a top player. I just think whether it's injuries, confidence, the fact that he made a really poor move to Chelsea when he was coming off the back of not playing football for 6 months, whatever it might be, his career's just gone down the Swanee. And I can look past a player who's done Everton dirty. I spoke about Wayne Rooney before. I can look past that. I think they're genuinely worth it. If Lukaku wanted to come back, I'd be all over him like a fly on shite, but that's not going to happen. So I think it's Ross Barkley for me as a massive no-fly zone. I'd much rather try and reignite Dele Alli's career, for example, just because I think he's got more talent. I think he's more of what we need than Ross Barkley, who he's 27, 28 now. Don't actually know what position he plays, whether he's a centre mid, attacking mid, 6, 8, 10, I don't know. So not for me, but I think Lampard will want to bring at least 2 players in, and whoever the managers I think would want to bring at least 2 in.
Yeah, we've got to hope that surely these sort of conversations have been taking place, because we know how little of the transfer window's left and how important it is that we get players in, because at the minute this current group of players just aren't going to get us out of this tricky situation that we're in. And if we are going to avoid relegation, God forbid, then we need to start getting something fresh into the side. So if it is Lampard, he's got a couple of days to get his target across, and hopefully the board can deliver that for him, because, like I said, we do need it. So yeah, just to finish off, we'll leave it there. Of course, this video is very much just it feels very much like the calm before the storm. I feel like the next 24 hours are going to be huge, and I'm sure there's going to be more videos coming out on the channel about the imminent announcements, if you like. This video is very much just like testing the waters before this announcement's going to be made, and if it is going to be Lampard, then there's going to be a lot of news and a lot of coverage surrounding Everton, and it's just vital that if it is Frank, that he gets us off to the best possible start. So just to finish off, James, if it is Lampard, is he the man who's going to keep us up and bring a few good times back to Goodison Park, because we do need it, don't we? And I feel like the Brentford game as well, the fact that his next game's sort of Brentford in the cup, it's a good opportunity for his first game for the fans to get behind him, throw everything at the game and start to ignite a bit of a cup run, maybe get a bit of confidence behind the players. And if we can bring another couple in, then going into those massive games against Newcastle and Leeds, it can hopefully add some confidence. So do you feel like Lampard could install some confidence on short term?
Yeah, I said the other day over on Facebook about how I asked, is Lampard the man who says to Moshiri, if I'm coming in, I'm not going to be your puppet, you have to bring a director of football in, you're not going to influence him, Keir options not part of my plans, he should be part of yours. He's got that authority, he's got that aura, and that's a word people don't really like in football, but he's got that about him where he can, I think, command a lot of respect. And Benitez was on his, he was delighted to get this job, wasn't he? He wasn't going to get another job anywhere else. So, whereas someone like Ancelotti could have gone anywhere, Lampard, I think, will have lots of other great opportunities come up over the next 6 months or whatever. This is the kind of manager he's bringing in because he believes in Everton, because he's going to have things his own way. He rejected Norwich. I think it was maybe Bournemouth he rejected as well. He had a couple of jobs, and I think he said on the overlap with Gary Neville, he's had a few interviews and stuff like that. So it feels like he's kind of cherry-picked the job for him. And if that's Everton, then I think that kind of says that he has to have it in his terms. It's got to be perfect for him, or as perfect as football can be, I suppose. But I think he is. I think he could well be the man to say, we need to change this whole thing. He's an ambitious young manager. He's not here for a payday. He's not here because no one else will give him a shot. He's here because he wants to be Everton manager. And that does excite me. If the players can't get up for Frank Lampard, as strange as that still sounds in my head, then I don't really know who they could get up for, because, again, as we mentioned before, this is one of the best Premier League footballers of all time, the best Premier League midfielder to ever play in my mind. So I think this has to be the appointment where the players can look at themselves now finally and say, we've got a manager who wants to be here and we want to play for him. Whereas if someone like Ancelotti, it was like, yeah, I think the players wanted to play for him, but he jumped at the first chance he got, and I think the players probably could sort of sense that as well. Whereas Benitez, I think everyone probably hated him, to be totally frank. So yeah. I think this could be a really nice change of pace for Everton. I'm hopeful he wasn't the first, second, third, fourth, fifth person I would have wanted at Everton, but the way it's come about, the way that the protests, how sad it's been seeing getting Goodison to face, all that sort of stuff, I just think now is the kind of time where we say, yeah, get him in, back him, support him. And I do, obviously we all hope he's the man, but I've become more positive over the past 14 days or whatever it is, that he is going to be the man who can sort of turn us around. And I'm all for it now. I think I've managed to convince myself over the last few days that he could be the man. So yeah, why not? I think the fact as well you mentioned that the first game's a cup game, it's kind of not necessarily a free hit, but if we get beat in the cup, then whatever the league position is unaffected. So go out for the irony wouldn't be lost on me if the man who broke our hearts in 2009 was the man who came back and did something great for Everton. So I'd be all for that, and all would be forgiven as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'll reiterate what I said earlier. He's a young manager. He's passionate. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He's going to bring some new ideas. Gives young players a chance. He's got a lot of respect within the game. And like you rightly said, James, if players can't get up to for a name like Frank Lampard, then they've not got much going for them. So yeah, we'll leave it there. Thanks for jumping on with us, James. Much appreciated. Of course, everyone sit tight. There could be an announcement very soon. And if, when that announcement does come, if and when it is Frank Lampard, then we will have a lot of content coming out on the channel. So be sure to drop us a like and subscribe if you haven't done already. As I say, keep an eye on the channel, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot to talk about over this coming weekend. Again, big thanks to James from the Babbling Blues for coming on and having a chat with us about this. So yeah, we'll just see where the next few hours take us. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, everyone. and enjoy the rest of your weekend. It should be interesting. So yeah, take care everyone, and all the best.